Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. The studio lights were softer that morning, as if they too understood the weight of what was about to be said. Kelly Ripa sat in her chair, fingers laced together, the familiar sparkle in her eyes dimmed by something deeper, something raw. Across from her, the empty chair felt louder than applause ever could. Mark's chair. His absence wasn't just noticeable, it was deafening. For years, America had watched Kelly and Mark laugh, tease, finish each other's sentences, and build a kind of on-air magic that felt like family. But families, even the ones that look perfect on screen, carry private storms. And on this morning, Kelly was finally ready to talk about one of hers. She took a breath, a long one. The kind you take when you're standing on the edge of a memory that still hurts to touch. People see the smiles, she began, voice steady but fragile, but they don't always see the goodbyes. Mark's farewell hadn't come with fireworks or dramatic speeches. It wasn't wrapped in a neat bow or tied up with a final joke. It came quietly, painfully, like most real endings do. There were conversations whispered late at night, long walks where words failed, and moments when both of them pretended everything was fine because pretending felt easier than breaking. Kelly admitted that at first she didn't want to believe it was real. After all, how do you say goodbye to someone who has been part of your daily rhythm for years? Someone who knew when to jump in with humor and when to simply listen? Someone who, in many ways, had become a constant in a world that never stops changing. Mark didn't just leave a show, she said softly. He left a chapter of our lives. To viewers, Mark's departure looked graceful, professional, calm, even hopeful. But behind the scenes, Kelly revealed, it was anything but easy. There were days when Mark would walk into the studio carrying a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Days when Kelly would crack a joke just to keep the mood light, knowing full well that both of them were counting moments they weren't ready to lose. "It's strange," she said, brushing away a tear she didn't bother to hide. "You spend years building something with someone, and then suddenly you're supposed to just let it go." The hardest part wasn't the last show, it was the weeks leading up to it. Every shared laugh felt heavier. Every inside joke felt like a reminder that time was running out. Kelly described it as grieving before the loss even happened, a slow ache that sat in her chest and refused to leave. What Kelly wanted people to understand most was Mark's pain. He carried it quietly, she explained. Mark is the kind of person who doesn't want to burden anyone with his feelings. While the world speculated about reasons and rumors, the truth was far more human. Mark was standing at a crossroads, torn between gratitude for what had been and fear of what came next. Leaving wasn't just about walking away from a job, it was about stepping into uncertainty. Kelly recalled a moment backstage just days before his farewell. Mark had paused, looked around the familiar space, and said almost to himself, "I didn't think this would be so hard." That sentence stayed with her. Because when something means everything to you, letting go feels like losing a piece of who you are. The final morning arrived quietly. No alarms blared, no dramatic music played, just another day that happened to carry the weight of an ending. Kelly remembered walking into the studio and feeling an unexpected calm, like the moment before a storm finally breaks. Mark greeted everyone as he always had, with warmth and jokes, but there was a softness to him that day, a vulnerability that words couldn't quite capture. When the cameras rolled, they did what they'd always done, talked, laughed, connected. To viewers, it looked like another great episode, but Kelly knew better. "Every time I looked at him," she said, voice trembling, "I was thinking this is the last time." The last shared glance before a commercial break, the last off-camera whisker, the last moment of knowing exactly what the other person was thinking without a single word being spoken. When the show ended, there was applause, loud, heartfelt,
full of love. Mark stood, hugged everyone, and then turned to Kelly. That hug, she admitted, tears falling freely now, was one of the hardest things I've ever experienced. The real pain, Kelly revealed, didn't hit until later. The next morning, she walked into the studio alone. Mark's chair was gone. The jokes they used to share echoed in her head, but there was no one to catch them. I didn't realize how much of my comfort came from knowing he'd be there, she said. She described sitting down, adjusting her notes, and feeling an overwhelming sense of loss, not just professionally, but personally. Because when you spend so much time with someone, they become woven into your daily life in ways you don't fully appreciate until they're gone. Mark, too, struggled in his own way. Kelly shared that he called her a few days after leaving, his voice heavy with emotion. He said, "I didn't know it would feel so lonely." That is when it hit her. Goodbyes don't end when the door closes. They linger. They follow you home. They sit with you in quiet moments when there's nothing left to distract you.
Kelly was clear about one thing. There was no bitterness, no resentment. What we had was real, she said firmly, and real things don't disappear just because they change. She spoke about gratitude, how lucky she felt to have shared that chapter with Mark, how proud she was of the work they did together, and how deeply she respected his courage to move forward even when it hurt. Sometimes, Kelly reflected, the bravest thing you can do is walk away from something you love because you know it's time. That lesson, she admitted, wasn't easy to accept, but it was one she was learning to carry with grace. Healing didn't come all at once. It arrived in pieces. In moments when Kelly would almost text Mark a joke before remembering he wasn't there anymore. In days when she caught herself smiling at an old memory instead of crying over it. In quiet realizations that pain and gratitude can coexist. "There are days I still miss him terribly," she confessed, "and there are days I feel thankful instead of sad. Both can be true." She learned to honor the loss without letting it define her, to allow herself to feel the ache without drowning in it. And slowly, she found comfort in knowing that what they shared had left a permanent mark on her life. A message to Mark. Toward the end of her emotional update, Kelly paused, looking directly into the camera as if speaking to someone far beyond it. "If Mark is watching," she said gently, "I want him to know that what we built mattered. It still matters." Her voice softened, filled with warmth and sincerity. Goodbyes are painful, but they don't erase love. They don't erase history. They don't erase connection. She smiled through her tears, a real smile, the kind that comes from acceptance rather than performance. Moving forward, not moving on. Kelly made it clear she wasn't trying to move on from Mark's farewell. Instead, she was learning to move forward with it, to carry the memories without letting them weigh her down. Some chapters end, she said, but they shape the ones that come next. As the segment came to a close, the studio was silent, not awkwardly, but reverently. It was the kind of silence that follows honesty, the kind that lets emotions breathe. Kelly took one last breath, steadier now. "Thank you," she said, "for letting me share this." And in that moment, viewers didn't just see a television host, they saw a woman navigating loss, gratitude, and growth all at once. A woman reminding everyone watching that even public goodbyes are deeply personal, and that behind every smile there is a story still healing. Mark's farewell was painful, but it was also proof of something beautiful, that what they shared was real enough to hurt, meaningful enough to miss, and strong enough to be remembered with love.